So the Trump administration is using shadowy tech giant Palantir to create a mass database of information on every American citizen. And they're basically doing this by using hundreds of data points from bank accounts, student debt and disability filings, even medical claims. So of course, critics are sounding the alarm saying that Trump could use all of this information to push his political agenda by surveilling immigrants and punishing his opponents.
And so what's surprising about this is that it's actually for American citizens, because we've reported previously that Palantir is building software for ICE to track immigrants that would basically give them real-time visibility on immigrants' movements and their visa status.
And it feels like every big tech story that we've been working on, whether it's like immigration in the US or the war in Ukraine or space technology or like random, even the event app Partiful, has some kind of mention of Palantir. We've actually gotten so many requests to do this story, so today we're doing a deep dive into what is Palantir, a company that's referred to as the AI arms dealer of the 21st century.
And Palantir was founded after 9/11 to be the software that could have identified and stopped the hijackers in that case. So basically, they build software that helps organizations manage and secure data, enabling them to analyze and understand complex information. We're going to kind of unpack what that means throughout the course of this segment because it is complicated, but it was founded by Peter Thiel, who we've mentioned so many times on this show. He co-founded PayPal with Elon Musk. He's JD Vance's mentor, huge Trump supporter, and one of Palantir's first investors was the CIA.
And apparently the company is credited with helping track down Osama bin Laden, although as journalists we do have to point out that this hasn't been like confirmed, but the company has kind of like run with the rumor. And what makes Palantir so different is that it offers specifically tailored AI software as well as teams of engineers that actually customize that software. So it's like an AI tech company times consulting firm.
And the company has been a huge deal for a while now, so I'm sure everyone who works in tech that's watching is like, how are you just finding out about them? Because they've been credited with saving their customers hundreds of millions of dollars, detecting Chinese spyware on the Dalai Lama's computer, thwarting Pakistani suicide bombers, and they unraveled Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. That's crazy.
And it isn't this like huge company. It apparently only has 4,000 people working there, although it's worth about $300 billion.
Should I do the math? Okay, so that like 1 over 4,000 equals what over 300 billion?
Ren's doing the math in the corner.
So that's like 75 million per employee.
Whoa. And it's built on like a quirky tech startup kind of vibe. So the name Palantir is actually a nod to magical stones in The Lord of the Rings that are apparently used to kind of see anything that's happening in the world at any given time. Interestingly, in the books, the stones were invented for good, but then manipulated by evil forces.
No foreshadowing at all. And while they do a lot of work in the commercial sector with companies like JP Morgan Chase, Airbus, and Ferrari, over half their revenue comes from government contracts. So they've been awarded, by our math, $3.5 billion in government contracts, including nearly $1 billion just since Trump took office in January.
No, they've basically worked with every sector of the government. So the CIA, the FBI, ICE, the NSA, the Center for Disease Control, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, Space Force, Special Operations Command, West Point, the IRS, even the Army.
Well, speaking of the Army, Palantir recently delivered its first batch of state-of-the-art AI-powered trucks from its Project Titan, which are supposed to streamline the battlefield process of spotting, tracking, and of course, blasting. So basically, these are lightweight industrial trucks and trailers that consume data from the air, land, and space and employ AI to analyze it to give troops quicker, sharper insights.
And it's been highly praised. A congressional report in April rated the highest and lowest performing programs in the Army, and it lists Titan as a star performer.
The next batch of Titan trucks will be delivered early this summer.
Palantir also made headlines in 2017 when it was roped into top secret Pentagon project Maven, which basically uses AI to process and analyze images and videos from aircrafts and drones and satellites. And then AI specialists use the software to automatically identify buildings, weapons, and people in the footage.
Palantir recently closed a deal to provide this Maven software to NATO, and Ukraine's military has been using it throughout the war with Russia. So according to the CEO, Alex Karp, from the moment the algorithms detect their targets to when they're hit is only 2 to 3 minutes. And experts say the old process used to take 6 hours.
Which is such an insane advancement. And from our reporting, we kind of found out how this Palantir-Ukraine alliance came to be. So in 2022, Karp took a secret trip to Kyiv and offered to supply Ukraine with technology that would allow it to be, quote, David to Russia's Goliath.
Well, since we're on the subject of Karp, can we talk about him a little bit? Because This guy is known for being eccentric. He cross-country skis for hours every week. He has the same body fat percentage as Michael Phelps at the Olympics, which is 7%. And he's obsessed with Batman, so Palantir's flagship project is called Gotham.
It's so weird, and his friends have said that he kind of thinks of himself as Batman, like saving the world from evil. So you could say that Palantir is like a very values-driven company, but it's like the values of this one guy. So it's kind of like working for an entire ideology. So he has said, we have a consistently pro-Western view that the West has a superior way of living and organizing itself, especially if we live up to our aspirations. So they're not just after huge contracts and money. It seems like if Palantir is doing a project, then Karp strongly believes in the cause.
Well, one cause he really believes in is Israel.
That a few people get wealthy, and if you said platitudes that were obviously stupid, you could...
You're getting wealthy off of killing Palestinians. Palantir kills Palestinians with their AI and technology.
Oh.
Palantir's been supplying Israel with such advanced targeting capability that critics actually call into question all the times Israel says they've accidentally hit a target. For example, we all remember last year when Israel mistakenly blew up those 3 aid trucks from World Central Kitchen in Gaza. So people ask how that's even possible because this Palantir software is so exact.
Palantir has also been linked to some of Israel's most like notorious AI tracking programs like Where's Daddy and Lavender. So the first one tracks suspected militants and then notifies Israeli forces when they've returned to their family homes, which makes them targets for airstrikes. And then Lavender assigns people in Gaza a score of 1 to 100 in terms of how likely they are to be like Hamas related. And that data is what they use to make kill lists. So Palantir has denied involvement with any of these, although they've been like associated with these types of programs.
And Palantir isn't shy about where it stands. The company took out a full-page ad in the New York Times last year stating Palantir stands with Israel, just to let everybody know. And Karp said, we've lost employees. I'm sure we'll lose more employees. If you have a position that does not cost you to ever lose an employee, it's not a position.
So moving on to another Palantir program, even though we're trying to hit all the important ones, it's impossible to hit all of them because there's so many. We're going to now focus on its work with ICE. So it's been an ICE contractor actually since 2011, which is a lot longer than I would have thought. And it supplied software to the first Trump administration to carry out a border deterrence operation that basically charged undocumented parents as smugglers, which would obviously, as a result, separate them from their families. And this was in the hopes of kind of dissuading immigrants from crossing the border with children.
ICE has also relied on Palantir software to carry out a lot of notable raids, like the 2019 raid of Mississippi chicken processing plants, which was actually the biggest single-day deportation raid in U.S. history. They arrested 680 people, including parents on the first day of school, so children returned to empty homes. And in 2018, when ICE agents fanned out across the country and raided almost 100 7-Elevens, and Palantir software was actually already preloaded on all of the ICE agents' phones.
And so even after all these very aggressive raids, Palantir has chosen to renew its contracts with ICE. So in 2019, 200 employees tried to get Karp to donate the proceeds of the $49 million contract to charity, but obviously that didn't work.
Well, one of the costs of these controversial partnerships is a lot of criticism. Amnesty International released a report titled Failing to Do Right, the Urgent Need for Palantir to Respect Human Rights.
And last year, one of Scandinavia's largest investment firms actually sold all of its Palantir holdings because of its support for Israel. And even just working at Palantir can get you a lot of backlash. So Ren, if you want to tell them.
Yes. So you guys might have seen online that the party planning app Partiful was being canceled in the last couple of months. Well, it turns out it's because 6 of the Partiful higher-ups used to work at Palantir.
Yeah, why would we care about that when Partiful collects your personal information like your birthday, your contacts, your IP address, your location? They would only share your information with the government or a private company if they determine there's a good reason and it's necessary to.
And the term the Palantir Mafia has been circulating around recently because everyone who works there is clearly very powerful and well-connected. So Business Insider found that 39 major startup founders in the AI, legal tech, healthcare spaces were Palantir alum. And they've been compared to the PayPal Mafia, which of course gave the world Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, all of those guys.
But many Palantir alum have publicly rebuked their former employer. Last month, 13 alums signed a letter urging Palantir to stop its endeavors with Trump. They said Palantir's leadership has abandoned its founding ideals. Big tech, including Palantir, is increasingly complicit, normalizing authoritarianism under the guise of a revolution.
The letter also said that executives abandoned their responsibility and are in violation of Palantir's code of conduct.
So we spoke to one of the authors of this letter, Linda Xia, about why she signed it, what Palantir projects specifically she's most concerned about, and how she hopes the company changes. And so what made you feel comfortable and want to sign on to this letter publicly?
We were part of creating the product and selling the product and otherwise putting it out into the world. And in my view, that gives us a little bit of responsibility to say something when we see that product being used to advance undemocratic ideals, to be used for things that we don't believe in, that go against the values that Palantir has espoused.
And what projects at Palantir are most concerning to you?
I think the big one for me has always been ICE. Even when I joined, I think it was a bit contentious to me that the software was used at all, but specifically what is happening now with this targeted enforcement, and more recently, this idea that there can be a database that brings together data from tax returns and census information, I think is incredibly dangerous and potentially damaging, because data that has been collected for taxes isn't meant to be used for deportation. So that ruins the public's trust in its institutions.
We saw that a lot of what the letter kind of focuses on is how the values of early Palantir are being violated now with all of these contracts.
The reason a lot of people actually join Palantir because they believe in this mission, this thing that is bigger than ourselves. And part of that, I think, is the Western values. It's the democratic ideals. It is about human rights, and the company has shown very little interest in hearing more about that sort of thing. That marks a pretty clear departure from what was originally sold to us when we joined.
And it's important to note that this small company's influence and number of contracts is just growing around the world.
Yeah, they pissed off the disability community by lobbying for cracking down on benefits in the UK. They have a healthcare partnership in Japan, and it's very high priority for them to expand into Japanese military defense. Oh, and Alex Karp traveled with Trump on his recent trip to Saudi Arabia, and Palantir will play a role in that massive arms deal.
Right. A few weeks ago, the company tweeted, "Palantir is proud to deepen its ties with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia."